Welcome everybody to another Indie Dev Showcase here on the channel. Each week I spotlight 6 of the many indie games we play here for our Wednesday night streams. And if you'd like to submit a game for a future stream or video, please get in touch. All games shown are either press keys, demo builds, or from my own massive backlog of games. And we are starting off with 30XX. This is the sequel to the, I guess no complicated way to put it, Mega Man X roguelike of 20XX. The footage that you're seeing is taken from its early access and may not represent the current version of it. So, if you missed 20XX, as I said, this is basically what if Mega Man X was a roguelike. You have your run that is determined based on which robot masters you get, as well as what order you fight them in. Be a robot master, you'll gain power that you can then use on other fights. Now, one of the big things about 30XX, just like with 20XX, is that there are numerous upgrades that you can find throughout the world that will give you more health, more power, or armor pieces that can radically change how your character behaves. As with the first game, you have 2 characters you can play as, one who plays very much like X, and the other one who plays like Zero. Now, one of the big things about 30XX compared to the first game, first off, as you can tell, the aesthetics have definitely been given an upgrade in terms of even more bits, I guess, being thrown at you. But the level design has been enhanced. Levels are far larger than they were in the first game, and I think that could be better and worse in this respect. There's a lot to find, or there's a lot more space to move around in them, but they do have that kind of emptiness, I think, that we see from some games that are built on procedural generation. The levels, as within 20XX, are procedurally built out of various areas and obstacles kind of, again, stitched together. Now, in terms of the overall gameplay, or where the game is at, again, if you are a fan of the Mega Man X style of gameplay, 30XX will certainly work for you in that respect. I don't know at this moment, especially from what I played during my first run of this on early access, whether there is enough, I guess, quote-unquote, newness to 30XX compared to the first game. The game still features the same kind of persistent elements with gaining resources that let you permanently upgrade your character, permanently unlock new items, and so on and so forth. And the game does promote that there will be additional difficulty modifiers that you can turn on if you want a greater challenge. So, with that said, if you are a fan of the Mega Man style, or you did play 20XX and you're looking for a new one, I would say check this one out. But like I said, I'm still not sure if there's enough that's really making this one stand out compared to that one. At least, again, from when we play this on early access. Up now we have Doors of Insanity. This is a game that, as you can tell by our look here, definitely draws comparisons to Slay the Spire. The developer of this game's previous 2 titles were idle games that still had this very impressive, almost like, again, very animated aesthetic to it. Now, with Doors of Insanity, the footage you're seeing is taken from early access, and just like our last game, may not represent the current version of it. So, as I said, this is definitely going for the Slay the Spire deck building roguelike design. You go from encounter to encounter. Instead of having a full map, you simply choose different doors. Go into an encounter and you're going to fight using the cards and gear that you found. Your gear will affect your basic stats in terms of what your cards will do, how much damage you'll take, etc., etc. But as with other deck builders, it is really going to come down to what cards you get and how you synergize. An interesting aspect of this one is that there's definitely a greater focus on being able to summon pets or minions using your cards that can aid you during combat. Kind of like the third character from Slay the Spire in that regard. Now, unfortunately, we didn't really get a chance to see what the persistent elements of Doors of Insanity were too greatly when we played this one on stream a very long time ago for those of you watching this. But as with the developer, I think their name is One Shark's previous titles, I love the animated aesthetic of this game. Now, whether that translates into gameplay, that I'm not so sure of. Again, the deck building roguelike genre has certainly become very flooded with additional games that have done all manner of different things to try and differentiate itself from Slay the Spire. And with the version of Doors of Insanity that I played, I don't know if what's here is going to be enough to convince someone who is completely deck builder out to play this one. If you're not tired of deck builders, I would say give this one a check and see what you make of it. Again, I don't think it does anything too revolutionary, but it seems to, at least from the version that we played, be another great take at it. For our next game, this is Fights in Tight Spaces. And once again, this was played on early access, and the footage you see may not represent the current version of it. Got a lot of those games for this week's spotlight. But this is essentially taking the deck building roguelike formula, I guess, into beat 'em up territory. It reminds me in a weird way of something like Metal Gear Acid from back in the day. But our concept is that we are a super spy who gets things done with their fists and feet. And it's up to them to go on missions and try and save the world from evil organizations. And to do that, we are going to be, well, fighting a lot in tight spaces. So the general concept is that all of our cards represent different actions. Punches, kicks, throws, movements, etc. They all have different costs as well as different utility associated to them. Your mission in each fight is to deal with the enemies without taking damage yourself. You can do this by moving around, building up block/armor, and you will have to figure out how to get around these enemies and try and keep your health alive whenever possible, as your health is persistent across each match, and you can repair it at specific hospital nodes on the map itself. As for general card play, it does feel like one of those games, much like some of the other deck builders we've played, where you are either going to have a very, very easy time with getting good cards, or the game can become very frustrating. Enemies' healths, as well as their abilities, tend to spike as you go from chapter to chapter. You'll have to make use of open doors and windows to shove them out for an instant kill, and upgrading your cards that allow you to move around and kind of dictate the flow of combat definitely feels more important than actually getting higher power cards. Now, in the version that we played, what wasn't in the game was the ability to, I believe, set up different styles of decks. Or I think there may have been like one or two, but we really didn't get to see too many of them. But you do have quote-unquote different builds based on how you want to play, with strategies that are more about blocking and countering, those that are more about using moving and manipulating the character's positioning to your advantage, and so on and so forth. But I really like the concept of this game. Now, with that said, I don't know what has been added to it since we played this one on our stream many months ago, but unlike our last game, this one definitely feels like it's going to be a little bit different compared to some of the other deck building roguelikes we've played. And if you are interested, I would say check this out. I believe there is a free prologue still available. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games for this spotlight. And as always, if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out these books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. For our next game, this is Morkredd. And what we have here is, I guess, Moody Katamari Damacy. Our story is that we are in a world entirely ruled by darkness, and it's up to our 2 heroes here to push this light orb in order to figure out what's happening, save the world, and I'm sure solve all variety of puzzles. Now, what's interesting about Morkredd is that the footage that you're seeing is actually from single player mode. That you control each character with a different analog stick, but this game also comes with full co-op that we did on stream as well, and was a whole lot of fun and craziness. So the big limiter in Morkredd is that shadows are death. If either character crosses each other's shadows, or the shadow changes around that kind of envelops them, they will die, and you'll have to restart at the nearest checkpoint. This creates a very crazy dynamic of having to manipulate the orb while manipulating the character so you don't accidentally kill each other, and all the while solving puzzles. And as you can see, things get a little kooky in terms of how you maneuver. And what this game is, it's a really solid example of one mechanic or one kind of game system, and then exploring all the different ways you can apply and alter it. Now, the general path through the game is of course linear. There are bonus challenges and trophies that you can find, but the final act of it that involves a crazy kind of manipulating the ball between two hands element was really well done. I would like to have seen more unique situations like that. The game came with DLC that was more advanced or master level challenges, and I really enjoyed this one. This was definitely an underrated hit from what we played of it on stream. If you're looking for another kind of action puzzle game, I highly suggest Morkredd, especially when you get a friend to play with, so the two of you can play, I guess, a flashlight tag together. Now up, this is Luck Be a Landlord. This game is in early access, and of course what you see may not represent the current version of it. But this is a game that begs to ask the question, what if we combine a Slay the Spire-like with slot machines? And it is far less evil than that sounds. So we are trying to pay our landlord, and instead of looking for work or doing YouTube for a living, you're going to be playing a slot machine day in and day out to earn the necessary coins in order to win. So the kind of dynamic of this game is that after every spin, you are able to choose a different icon or symbol to place on the slot machine going forward. The different symbols will have different properties to them, as well as different rarities. And as the game advances, the complexity is that certain symbols will synergize with other ones, such as like a farmer one that gives you more coins based on how many other like fruit-based symbols show up on the wheel during that spin. And the game turns into this like very weird kind of, it is completely RNG based, but you're trying to manipulate the RNG in your favor by what symbols you place on the slot machine. As you play, more things get unlocked, and your challenge is to just keep going while the ever greater cost of your rent kind of beckons in the distance. And it is one of those games, I think this is kind of an acquired taste. The problem, I think, for me and for people who are more used to more controlled RNG is that it's just not really like giving you a lot of control over this game. Again, because you're not only dealing with the luck of what items show up after each spin, but the spin itself. It can kind of feel like you're just hitting the spin button and then, hoping and praying to the winds that something will happen. But even with that said, I think this is a really good kind of, I guess, starter roguelike or starter roguelite kind of experience. That while it's not the most complicated game, I think for what it does it really well. And there really hasn't been a game that kind of delivers this specific style. So if you are interested in something a little bit different from your roguelikes, I would say give Luck Be a Landlord a try. For our final game of this week's showcase, this is Revita. And what you're seeing is play from its early access, and of course things may not represent the current version of it. So this is a 2D kind of action roguelike, similar in some sense to, I think it was Neon Abyss, or even something like Exit the Gungeon, in terms of a side-scroller, shooter-based kind of gameplay. So our main element of this one is that this is run and gun, as you're going to do your best to shoot and dodge enemy projectiles in each room. The room layouts are a bit on the basic side, at least from when we play this one on stream. Your job, get through each biome one floor at a time, get to the boss, beat it, move on to the next. Now, the game features an extensive persistent element as you unlock new items that can show up, as well as upgrades and additional characters at your hub that will grant additional services and options there. Now, the twist that Revita brings is that health is literally your resource, as everything in this game, in order to be used, is going to require you to give up some of your health. In the short run, it could just be taking a hit, but in some cases you could lose out on kind of your max health to get a massive upgrade. And of course, these upgrades will radically change how your character behaves, how your shot patterns work, etc., etc. So this is one of those games that I'm kind of split on whether or not I can fully recommend it. I think the pixel art looks nice, but the game sometimes seems to zoom in a little too much in some rooms. It can be a little hard to keep track of what's going on as well. In terms of the actual roguelikiness of Revita, the problem that having health be your main resource is that you're kind of going to be in one of those positions where if you are getting really good upgrades and it's very easy for you to fight, you're not going to have to worry about taking damage, so you can then just kind of refill your health normally and becomes easier. But if you use up your health on a bad upgrade or something that doesn't help you, you can enter that downward spiral. You get kind of your Estus refill by killing enemies, and then you have to use it in order to refill, I believe it's half a heart, although things may have changed since we played this one. And after like 3 or 4 runs of it on stream, it didn't really feel like there was enough variance in each play. You have your starter weapon and you gain modifiers as, again, you get the various upgrades from treasure chests or shops. But it's not like Enter the Gungeon or Neon Abyss, where you get a brand new gun and then suddenly everything about how you fire completely changes. Now, it does have potential, and again, it's not fair to compare an early access game to a fully released one. And I would say, if you are in the mood for another action roguelike, give this one a check to see if you enjoy it or not. But there are examples of games that are finished that I think have a little bit better in terms of their replay value and their variance. But I am curious to see where this one is going to go when it finishes early access. So, with that said, we're going to wrap up this week's showcase here. As always, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to do all the liking and subscribing. If you are a developer working on an upcoming game and would like me to take a look at it here on the channel, please get in touch. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below. And if you donate $15 or more right now, you can get acknowledgement in my upcoming book, Game Design Deep Dive, free to play. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, wisdom there are in science of games. Until next time, take care.